So a very, very warm, and it is very warm actually, isn't it, Jackie?
Super.
Welcome to the very fabulous Jackie Baxter of the Long COVID podcast. Now, Jackie is normally the person doing the interviewing for the people that she has spent some amazing, amazing time finding out information for all of us to listen to and learn from. And it is now my turn to interview Jackie because Jackie has gone on a bit of a journey, as you might imagine, with all of the information that she's been gathering over the years now. Jackie, we'll come back to a bit more about the podcast in a minute. But Jackie has just actually finished the Fern program, and I want to know a little bit more about your story from the beginning. Okay, now whenever I ask people to share their story from the beginning, I want you to talk about, when you were at your most unwell, what was going on, and when was it, etc. Let's just make sure you remember to not associate back into the emotions too much, because we know that that can trigger off the memory, which then can trigger off the sensation in the body. So I'm going to invite you, Jackie, to take us right the way back to the beginning and tell us how come you're here with a long COVID podcast. How come you've had a recovery journey? When did it start for you, and what's it been like? So kick us off with, when did you begin this stuff?
Yeah. Well, it feels really strange being on the other side of the microphone.
It must do.
It's really weird, but it's really nice. So, I mean, one thing I noticed when I was interviewing other people who had recovered was that their stories always started before they got sick.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And now I've realized that actually it's the same for me. My story started long before I got sick. So I suppose I probably need to go back there. So I was on paper completely healthy. I was really fit. I was very into I was living a very, very active lifestyle. I met my partner hill walking. That's what we did all the time. And, we ran half marathons, we cycled the Hebrides, this was just what we did. And on top of that, or that on top of, I was also working what turned out to be way too many hours in a job that was quite stressful, but I was also making it way more stressful than it needed to be. I was doing, 3 to 4 hours of commuting a day, 4 days a week. I was then working evenings as well. I was working in education, which I think is quite a stressful kind of place to be working. And my job was quite kind of physically kind of demanding in terms of moving around and stuff as well. So I was very, very, very busy. I was always busy. I never used to sit down and do nothing because I wasn't capable of it. And I always got sick. I picked up every cold that went around the school, and I was just kind of permanently knackered. But at the time, that was just life. I considered myself to be completely fine. If anyone had asked me if I was struggling with anything, or if I was sick, or if I was anything, I would say, no, I'm completely fine. And then I got COVID, or what turned out to be COVID, because I didn't think it was at the start, because, this was before lockdown. So at the time, there was a handful of reported cases in Scotland. We were being told to go around, about our lives as normal. Everything was completely fine. You didn't need to worry unless you were, in a couple of specific cohorts, which I wasn't, or I didn't consider myself to be. So I was like, okay, kind of whatever. I'm not going to worry too much about this because we've been told not to. And then I was out actually on a hill walk, and I just got hit by this kind of like overwhelming tiredness. And I was walking along a track. It was barely uphill, and I was just kind of struggling to put one foot in front of the other. And I just went, oh well, I've just had a hard week. I'll keep going. So we climbed the hill, and I just remember in the car home, like I think I got back to the car and threw my keys at my partner and just said, I can't, like, you do it. And by the time I got home, like I was just utterly broken. But then, it was a Sunday night, went to bed, put my stuff ready for the next morning because, I was going to work because You know, there was pressure,
I
there
do.
was kids with exams. You know, I had to go through it because otherwise these kids wouldn't have someone to play for their exams, or, you know, they wouldn't have prep for their exams, or, you know, concerts coming up and all these things. So there was, you know, there was never any kind of question of not going through. And then when I woke up the next morning, I just couldn't.
Mm.
And but at this point, I thought it was a stomach bug. I felt slightly nauseous, and that was kind of it. And you know, we know now that that was definitely a thing, but at the time, it wasn't one of the things we were told to look out for. So, you know, each evening, I would put my stuff ready, thinking I've got to go through. I've got to go through. I can't let anyone else down. And after maybe 3 or 4 days, things started getting worse, and my partner actually ended up calling out the paramedics because he thought things were that bad. They were the ones that said, "Oh, it's COVID," and I was like, "Really? But it can't be." Yeah.
Right,
And if it is, you know, why is it making me feel this bad? Because I'm not supposed to be sick.
right.
So
I'm not coughing.
exactly, yeah. But at that point, I had quite severe shortness of breath and really, you know, like, and heart palpitations and all sorts of things. And I was just starting to feel really rotten. So it was a bit more believable by that point when they turned around and said, "Yeah, that's what it is. We're not taking you into hospital because you're just not sick enough." And I was
Yeah,
like, I feel sick enough.
right.
But they just said to me, you know, "We're going to leave you here, just rest up for a week and you'll be absolutely fine." And I had no reason to disbelieve them.
Of course.
So then after a week, I wasn't. It took me, I had better days where I thought, "Oh, this is all over, I'll go out for a walk."
Yeah.
Once or twice, I think, within the first month. But basically, the first month, I was pretty much stuck in bed the whole time. And if I did try to do something, like, "Oh, no, now we're back in bed for 2 weeks."
Yeah.
After about 4 weeks, I had a couple of weeks where I was sort of pottering around the house a little bit more. I probably was going out for kind of short walks at that point, but you know, I would find I was struggling to walk around the block because I was so breathless. So it was really bizarre. Like, it just felt, and you know, the city, we were in Glasgow at the time, the city was just a ghost town.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, it was just, you know, I hadn't witnessed the first kind of 6 weeks of this. Malky, once he was past his quarantine, he'd been out cycling and running around town, and he'd come back home and he'd been saying, "Oh, it's really strange."
Yeah.
And I was just like, I, you know, I have no frame of reference for this at all.
Disconnected. Yeah.
Yeah, complete disconnect. So, so yeah, I just, when I did finally start going out, you know, there were kind of people around, but not in the center, which
Mm.
is completely unheard of. Anyway, from about the 6 week mark, I did manage to start doing more. And me being me, went, "Oh, well, this is horrendous, but you know, let's just start doing some more exercise and build myself back up again, because, you know, that's what I've always done. You know, I've always dealt with everything by exercise."
Yeah.
So I would do more and more and more, and I was doing okay for it,
Mm.
for about a couple of months. By the time, I think it was about the 3.5 month mark from the beginning, I just hit a wall.
Right.
And that was, I don't know if that's the point where I'd say long COVID started.
Mm.
But that was certainly where the sort of fluctuating kind of, you know, symptoms, and you know, that we all kind of know as long COVID. And you know, again, me being me, I was like, "Well, you know, it's just a setback, we'll keep pushing." So I kept pushing and I kept feeling worse. So because I'm me, I did it more. So, you know, I have this very, very stubborn personality. And I remember my counselor saying to me that it is both my best and my worst quality. She
Of
said,
course.
"It's the one that got you into this mess, but it's also the one that will get you out."
Yeah.
And at the time, I wanted to throw something at her. But you know, looking back on it, I was like, you know, she's completely right.
Right.
You know, why was I doing all of those things over and over and over when they obviously weren't working? But I did.
Mm.
Um, and I remember seeing an Instagram quote the other day. I posted it on my Instagram, and it was something. It was something about, "We do the best thing that we can at the time."
Of course.
So, you know, we're just working what we've got at the time. You know, there wasn't that much information out there at the time. You know, I was a bit of a guinea pig here. So, you know, there's no point me beating myself up about the fact that I did all the wrong things, because I thought they were the right things at the time.
No one
But
knew that they were wrong at all. We weren't talking about it that way in
no,
2020 now, but only with the benefit of hindsight.
exactly, yeah, and I can do the whole thing where I'm like, well, should we have learned from the ME community and all of these things, and I've spoken to people in that community, and I think they were trying to kind of say, don't push through, don't push through. But I'm not sure. Maybe no one had really made the connection between long COVID and ME. I mean, it wasn't even called long COVID to start
No,
with because nobody realized it was more than just individuals. So, I don't know. But there's no point like beating myself up about it as much as I want to.
no, no, it won't help.
No, no, exactly. It just makes things worse, doesn't it? So it's, yeah, definitely. I think something that I've learned from, that exercise is great, and but it's not always the answer.
No.
Or not always the answer in the way I thought it was anyway. Um but anyway, I've got super sidetracked there. So yeah, basically I went on this roller coaster of ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs, and it was kind of a year on from when I got sick in the first place that I found anything that helped. So up until that point, I'd been doing too much and then too little and then too much, and on this kind of up and down kind of thing. And then I completely by chance found someone on Instagram who was saying, I can help long COVID by breathing. And I was like, I right. That sounds a bit kind of wishy-washy. And I think at that point, I still had kind of every single medical professional up on a pedestal, thinking that, they could fix everything because I never had any reason to doubt that. I
Yeah,
was in a very privileged position of never having been seriously ill in my life. I think the worst thing I ever had was tonsillitis. They gave me antibiotics and I was fine in a week, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah.
So, why would I have disbelieved that? And when this guy was saying, I can fix your long COVID by my breathing, or I can certainly help you, I was a bit like, well, sure, but at the same time, I will literally try anything because so far I've just been making things worse.
Yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, it turned out that I had completely dysfunctional breathing, and this has turned me down a massive kind of wormhole of breathing, because now I'm so obsessed with it, it's ridiculous. But yeah, I think my control pause was like 3 seconds, and the kind of minimum that people would expect to be at would be like 20, of like a healthy person. So I was like, okay.
Just explain that piece for anyone that's watching this and going, what did she just say? What's 3 seconds? What's 20 seconds?
So the control pause is basically how long you can hold your breath before you feel the need to inhale.
Yeah.
Um, so it's yeah, I won't go too technical because I'm actually training as a breathing instructor, so I could do, but I won't. I won't bore everybody.
Especially if we're talking about that ability to hold your breath out for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
We're looking for a kind of a healthy 20-second hold. If it's much less than that, like yours was at 3 seconds, there's a dysfunctional breathing pattern going on there, which will be affecting the autonomic nervous system. We know that now. Hopefully, most people have been picking up on the importance of breathing and regular breath work to help them with all this. But anyway, carry on. This is good.
Yeah, I mean it was amazing. So I worked to improve my breathing to the point where it wasn't dysfunctional, which
Right.
was huge. And realizing the effects that that then had on, like you say, other things. So at that point, as my breathing improved, the chest kind of pain didn't go away by any means, but it was a bit less severe. The heart palpitations, bit less severe. So it was, obviously kind of helping other things. And I noticed that when I did try to do some sort of exercise, so if I went out for a walk, which I probably still shouldn't have been doing, but I still felt myself much less out of breath when I was walking. So that was huge. So I was able to do that. And then that also led me into being able to use the breath as a tool. So I'd kind of fixed the broken bit, if you like. But then I was able to think, right, well, when my symptoms started flaring up, well, let's kind of focus on the breath. Let's use the breath now as a tool. So I found that really, really, really helpful. And then that kind of led me into yoga nidra, which has been amazing because I mean we've discussed this before. My brain, which is like a hamster wheel, it never ever shuts up. It goes round and round and round and round and round, and it is always firing, and it drives my partner crazy. he does this thing where he can sit down and it's almost just like he's been turned off, and he sort of goes meow. And it drives me
Lucky him.
nuts. I know, right? It drives me nuts, but at the same time, I'm incredibly envious of it because I just can't do it. In order to calm my brain down, yoga nidra is amazing because it kind of, I don't know, it gives me something to focus on, but something that isn't all the things. So I found that hugely useful. But I think if I tried to do that before I'd fixed my breathing, I would have just been hyperventilating the whole time because that's basically what I was doing. So I don't think that would actually have worked. Well, it might have done, but it certainly wouldn't have worked as well if I'd done it
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
So that was really, really helpful as well. I was also doing some gentle yoga again with the same person that I was breathing with. So that was helpful as well because that gave me something that felt like I was doing something, because I find it really difficult to sit still, which is kind of cruel when what you need to be doing is sitting still. But so that was really helpful. It felt like I was doing something, and it was all online, so I didn't need to leave the house. If I was struggling, I could just lie on the floor and not do the yoga. So it was great. So that was kind of the next thing, and then it was probably about a year on from that. It was about a year ago, just over a year ago from now, when I started doing the cold water. So this again was something that breathing guy, I should name him actually. He's called Wibbs and he's great.
Oh yeah.
And he'd suggested it. And at
Yeah.
the time I'd turn around and, well, I won't repeat what I said to him, but you can imagine. And it just was just like, no. And eventually I thought, well, the weather's warming up a little bit. Let's go get in Loch Ness. Let's go see. And I was in for, it took me ages to get in actually. I was walking in like, half a step and then being like, oh, half a step. Yeah, it was. But I got in and Malky got the photo. So there's this amazing photo of me like with Loch Ness behind, and Loch Ness is big.
Yeah.
And it was great. I got such a buzz from it, and so then I kept doing it. And to start with, I would just kind of go in, get out, wouldn't really do anything, but I just felt like I'd been plugged into a socket.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a literally like being plugged in, and it wouldn't last. Like I would feel good afterwards, but it wouldn't last. And then over time, it started lasting a bit longer. So then it was like, right, well, if I go for a swim, then I can also go for a walk. And if I, and then it was like, right, well, if I go for a swim, I can go for a longer walk. And things just, they were getting better and better and better. The water was helping, but I sort of got to the point where I didn't always need the water. So this was probably earlier this year. So I feel like I've probably skated over quite a lot of time, but there was just quite a lot of time when nothing was happening.
Yeah.
It was just like ups and downs, and just, I don't know, I was just so bored of the whole thing. It was like,
Can I just get you to recap on what were your main symptoms? So I'm definitely hearing lots of tiredness, lots of
yeah,
fatigue. Yeah. And what else?
yeah. The breathlessness, the palpitations, and the chest pain were probably the worst ones. Overall,
Have any
certainly
insomnia?
early on.
Did you have any insomnia with all of that mix?
Yeah, yes. I found that would go in waves. So I would have time where I was actually sleeping okay. I was sleeping like far too much, or what we would consider to be far too much. And then I would have like, 4 or 5 days, and it didn't seem to be in any kind of regular pattern, because I was thinking, is it related to my cycle? Is it related to, I didn't know, but it wasn't. It was, it's seemingly random, where I'd have 4 or 5 days where I just couldn't sleep, and it would just destroy me. Because, if we don't get, a normal person would be kind of like, oh, if they didn't get a good night's sleep. And if they didn't get a good night's sleep for 4 or 5 nights, they would be, finding it quite tough.
Serious is going on.
Exactly. You would struggle to get through your week if you were doing that. But then, on top of everything else, it was just, I just couldn't handle it. It was absolutely awful. And then there's that thing where, you know it's going to happen as well. So, when I had a bad night's sleep, it was like, oh my, are again. The last 4 times this has happened, it's been like 4 days. And then when you're really anxious, you find it even harder to sleep. So it was almost like it was making it worse. So that was definitely a thing. It wasn't all the time. but it was definitely a thing. And the chest pain really, really persisted. The palpitations and the breathing, sort of died away once I'd fixed my breathing pattern, and was doing that for the most part. But the
Yeah.
chest pain really, really persisted actually until earlier this year. And eventually, I just, because I never went to hospital to start with. A lot of people have these, stories, and I'm sure they're quite traumatic in themselves, where they've, gone into A&E, whether they've gone in themselves or whether, they've been taken in or whatever, but they've been checked over and they've been told there's nothing wrong with you, which I'm sure is traumatic in its own way, because you know that there is, but at least you've had all your vitals checked, you've had your ECG, you've had all these things. I hadn't had that experience. So I think, although I could turn around and say there isn't anything physically wrong, I didn't know that. And I think that not knowing in the back of my brain was,
Of
it was
doubting.
overriding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was overriding anything I could tell myself. So I think it was about a month ago, maybe 5 or 6 weeks, where I just went to the doctors and I said, look, you're going to tell me I'm ridiculous, but can you just like tell me I'm not about to drop dead from chest pain? And I thought he was going to kind of call me a hypochondriac and everything, because you hear about so many people being gaslit, and that hasn't happened to me. I've been quite lucky with all the doctors that I've seen, but I think it was still a worry. And he said, what do you want to get out of this? And I said, I want to be able to walk out of here knowing that I'm fine.
Yeah.
So he was great. He listened to everything and he said, look, you're absolutely fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with you, but we're going to run an ECG just for everyone's peace of mind,
Right.
which is a really weird experience, by the way, if no one's ever had that before. Like I'd never had it, but yeah, it came back clear. Okay, well, that's good. That's kind of what I expected.
Yeah.
But if I do get a little bit of chest pain, then I can just turn around and say, no, I'm fine.
Okay.
you're
Yeah.
you're just doing your thing, and okay, fine, but you're not something I need to worry about.
Mm.
So obviously it doesn't really happen anymore.
Mm.
um, so
Mm.
that was quite a thing. I'm trying to think what else. I think they were the main symptoms.
Mm.
Just the sort of fatigue, post-exertional stuff.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, if I tried to do things, but it wasn't always predictable either. Sometimes I would go and do something, I'd be like, oh, I got away with that. That was
Right.
great. And then sometimes, I would get out of bed and I'd be like, oh no.
Yeah.
So it was quite, I'm a person who wants to know answers, which is probably why I started a podcast, right? But it was like, I want to know things.
Mm.
And I want to look into all these things and find out, what's the pattern here, why is that happening, if I do this, does that happen? And sometimes it's really obvious. If you try and walk 3 times the distance that you normally do, then yeah, okay, that is probably going to send you over the edge. But sometimes it was just like out of nowhere. I've no idea what caused it, and it would drive me nuts because I would want to know.
So
But
at what point did you start the podcast then? Because you've done how many episodes now? It's nearly 100, right?
I think 88 went out this week.
Okay.
So yeah, this was back in, I think it was summer 2021.
Okay.
So to start with, I was actually working from home, which, looking back on it, shouldn't have been doing, but I thought it was the right thing at the time. And then I got up to the summer holiday, and normally in the summer holiday I would throw all my stuff in my car and head for the hills, and that would basically be me. And I would have this amazing summer, and then I'd go back to work in mid-August, and that would be that. So I was just seeing this like 6 weeks of like torture ahead of me, where the weather would be, it was summer. I'd want to be out there. I'd want to be doing this. I didn't have work as a distraction, and yeah, I was dreading it. So I just thought, because I'm the sort of person that can't sit still, I need something, but I need something that's not like trying to exercise, because every time I was not doing anything, I was like, what can I do? What can I do? And obviously couldn't do it, or if I did, I shouldn't have been. So I just, yeah, I can't really remember what gave me the idea for it, but I just thought I could bring together sort of people. I think one of the things I've noticed through this is this kind of like isolation, and it's partly because we can't go out and do things, but also because people don't understand. So, you know, even if you try to have a conversation with someone who's not sick, they, you know, some people will be nice and some people will be empathetic and some people will try and ask the right things or say the right things or just try and say something, but everything is loaded, isn't it? You know, if they ask you how you are, that can be a very loaded question. If they say I hope you get well soon, that can be quite loaded. It's very well meant, but it's just not what you want to hear. And you know, I don't really want to be hearing about everyone else's adventures because I'm stuck on my sofa doing nothing. So it was quite difficult. So I thought, well, I could bring people together, share some stories, make some people feel less alone, because if I was feeling alone, then other people probably were as well. So that's kind of how it started off. And then it's just kind of spiraled into this incredible kind of thing where I've been speaking to all these people across the globe. And I never imagined it doing this. But I don't know, I think I just realized that I was asking all the same questions that other people wanted to ask. So if I was interviewing a medical expert who knew about some aspect of long COVID, then I was probably asking the same questions that somebody else would want to. So it sort of gave me this kind of unique viewpoint on it. Well, not unique because thousands of other people were having the same thing, but you know, as a kind of podcast host, I guess. So so yeah, I mean, it really was a bit of a lifeline for me, you know. I mean, it was obviously out there helping other people as well, but all the people that I've met that have helped me have kind of been people that I've met through the podcast. You know, I met you through the podcast.
Episode 7 and 77.
Was it all the sevens?
7 and 77. Exactly.
That wasn't even deliberate. That's amazing. I love that. So yeah, I mean, it was incredible. I mean, I learned something from everybody. Some people obviously had more of an impact on me than others, but you know, every time I would do an episode, I would, you know, I'd come off and I would always feel exhausted, but I would always feel kind of buzzing as well, like in that kind of like I'm too tired, but also
wired.
Yeah. So I'd go through and I'd be like, oh, Malky, like I just learned this and this and this and this, and he'd be like, can you shut up? And I'll just listen to the episode when it comes out. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. But yeah, you know, it was really great, and it's helped me so much. And I didn't set it up because I wanted people to tell me I was great. Like, I don't have that much of an ego problem, honestly. But it was really nice as well when, you know, I wasn't working, because at the end of that summer, I actually ended up going on to sick leave and haven't been back at work since. So, you know, I think when we're not working, this is a problem of society, I think, that we feel useless. You know, our productivity and our self-worth shouldn't be linked. So I was just feeling kind of useless, sort of lying around the house doing nothing, or then trying to do things and regretting it. And it was really lovely just getting messages from people saying, oh, I listened to such and such an episode and this has really helped. Or there was someone that said, oh, I credit you with getting me in a position where I can actually be back at work. And I was like, I'm not sure I can take the credit for that, but you know, it's lovely to hear from people, and the people that I have connected with through it, you know, and through the whole kind of long COVID community as well, I suppose, you know, it has been one of those kind of silver linings, I guess. You know, I've met some really incredible people. That I probably wouldn't have done otherwise.
Well, no, exactly that, you know, and thank goodness we had the technology to do it. And, you know, that's something that I'm always kind of, you know, thanks the Lord for having, you know, everything set up for us to be able to connect with people globally, virtually, in a way that allows people that are too ill to leave their houses to not feel so isolated, because isolation is so damaging. That feeling of I'm really not well and I'm on my own, or I'm misunderstood. And, you know, if you're left to just sit with that on your own, that's terribly damaging for one's mental health and physical health. So, you know, you and I both kind of took to action, along with lots and lots of other people as well. You know, right, I'm going to do something, probably because we have very overactive minds and need to be doing something with them, which may well be part of the problem, you know, in the first case, but it's fine. No judgment on ourselves there. But yes, you know, that seeking out to do something mentally stimulating when the body needs to just have you be passive. I think you did a brilliant thing, Jackie. And it was, you know, looking at your kind of collection of interview now, I think it's an extraordinary achievement that you've that you've made there over those years. So now let's come to episode 77. We were talking about the fear of reinfection, weren't we? Because that was a really big thing for you. You'd got yourself to a point where you were doing a bit more, but you were also very much like, I'm stuck in this place that is holding me here. I don't feel like I can step forwards, because for you, you had a very visceral fear of reinfection. And why wouldn't you? Because you've been very unwell and we want to protect ourselves. And there's often trauma and, all sorts of associated fears and very physically held beliefs around, I can't, if I get this virus again, it's going to make me even more ill than it made me the first time. So talk to me about that fear, and then what's helped since, because obviously I know that we did some interaction. So talk to me about that moment when we had that interview.
Yeah, so I think at that point, something really stressful happened just before, it was early December, I think, and that sent me into this, what I now know is a kind of trauma response. My body literally shut down for about 5 days, and it was absolutely horrendous. And I think from that point, things did start getting better. And then as they started getting better, they started getting more and more better. And it was almost like, I realized how much stress affected me. I think I knew that already, but I think that was a real reminder. And I'm taking a bit of a tangent here, actually. But I think, the trauma mental health side of this is not to be underestimated. I think a lot of people find it really difficult to talk about mental health related to long COVID. I mean, probably mental health in general, actually, it's still more taboo than it should be. But I think mental health in long COVID is a sticky subject because so many people have been gaslit and told, oh, it's just anxiety. So I think people are genuinely worried about saying that they're feeling anxious or they're feeling depressed because the doctor's going to turn around and say, well, yeah, I've been telling you that the whole time, it's just anxiety.
Just take an SSRI, you'll be fine.
Exactly. And it's not that at all. But, yes, I was incredibly anxious. Yes, I probably was depressed, and I was absolutely, definitely traumatized. And all of these things were as a result of being ill for such a long time. And I think a lot of the trauma was down to the sort of original kind of, I'm sure everybody has some sort of trauma from that period, but I think the time I was ill, the kind of way that it all happened, I think there was a lot from there. And then the breathing difficulties that went on for a long time. So I have a lot of, every time my breathing isn't 100% right, it's like, and I have to reassure myself that my breathing is actually completely fine and it fluctuates anyway. But so yeah, I think, all this stuff is as a result of long COVID. But the problem is that then when you have anxiety, when you have depression, when you have trauma, it then feeds back into everything else. So it's not, it's not that it's causing the stuff, but it is, you get this vicious cycle. And I think that was a lot of what was happening to me. So partly, I mean, the first time we spoke, you told me to go and speak to a counsellor, and I was like, oh, I don't need to do that. Oh, actually, yeah, I really do. And that was one of the best things I did, because she was great. She was able to make me realize that actually you don't fix trauma. I'm a fixer. So I was like, right, how do I fix that? How do I make that go away?
Get rid of it.
Exactly. Make it gone. What do I do? Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And realizing that actually it's not something you get rid of, you kind of learn to live alongside it. And that was quite a big thing, because it was like, oh, so I can't make it go away. Well, that's not right. And yeah, kind of just acknowledging all these things were there, that was kind of helpful. And yeah, so I think that's a really big piece. So yeah, I think, in sort of early part of this year, things were starting to get better. I was doing more and more, feeling better for it. I think the point when I spoke to you, I was probably feeling maybe 90%, possibly. I find it really hard to put a percentage on things. People are like, oh, so what percentage are you at? And I'm like, well, I don't know, because how can I compare myself now to myself before? I'm actually healthier than I was before, but I can't do as much. And like, that sounds really weird, doesn't it? So yeah, I was doing really well. I was thinking, everything's kind of going right. Actually, what I need to do is build some confidence. But I still had this really big piece, as you said. I was, and I still am, scared of getting sick, because I was already sick. I was just kind of crawling out of this hole, starting to feel like I was seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. And I just thought, well, if I get sick now, it's going to catapult me back into all of this. So I was terrified about it. I wasn't going that, I mean, I was going out places, but it was always outside.
Always
I was very nervous around kind of groups of people. My partner has been working from home, and I was just like, how can this not be the best thing possible? You're working from home, you have a job that can be done from home. What are you complaining about?
Let's
Like,
stay in
you know,
forever.
exactly, yeah, like what's the problem? Why can't we just stay here
Yeah.
and, you know, I'm going to get better and we can go up the hills and you can work from home and, all these things. And it
Don't
was
ever need
like,
to go inside a restaurant or a pub again.
exactly, we never need to go anywhere. We don't need to see people. And, and it wasn't like we weren't seeing anybody, because we were
Sure.
seeing people, but it wasn't, um, he
We're
was like, oh, I just want to
very
go to a pub.
carefully managed.
Exactly. He wanted to go to the office, not all the time, because
Yeah,
I
but
think he does enjoy working from home. He can sit there in his
yeah.
pants. He doesn't have to get up so early. He can have lunch at home. He can have ice cream in the middle of the afternoon, like all
Sure.
these things. I'm making him sound like a total slacker. He's not. Um,
He's going to watch
but
it and go, thanks.
I know. So it was. I couldn't really understand why he wasn't happy with the situation, and I think that was a lot of the problem. Experience changes people. Every experience changes everybody, I think. And then when you have a big experience, and I think maybe especially when there's a lot of trauma involved, you know, I see things so much more differently. That's terrible English. So much more differently than I did before.
Differently.
It's like I value different things, and I don't know. I think if he understood it, he certainly couldn't put himself in my shoes,
Yeah.
and I wasn't in his shoes anymore because I'd changed, and I just yeah, it was we found it very difficult to talk about this because he I think he wanted to understand, but he's also, I'm going to massively stereotype here as well, he's also a bloke. So he puts his foot in it as well. So he'll try and
He
say the
also,
right thing.
just to be on his side a minute here. So Malik, I'm on your side. He wanted to have a life. He wanted to have a life where he could be going out with you, Jackie, his partner, and having fun and meeting people and socializing and going inside buildings where there was
Yeah.
fun stuff happening. And I totally understand from both perspectives. He was like, but it's really important for me and us that we do this. And you're saying, but it's really important for me and us that we don't do this. And that must have brought real tension into the home. And, I'm curious about how you began to work through that. What do you think made a difference?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we were arguing about it, and and he would want to not say something because he knew I was going to react to it, but then it would store up and store up and store up for him, and then he'd let it all out in a massive, like,
Yeah.
volley of. It felt like an assault almost sometimes, and he was just like, well, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to upset you, but then eventually he had to say something, and obviously it upset me, and because I was still quite sensitive to stress. I was, it would then, I would feel terrible as a result of it.
Yes.
So it was this kind of cycle of, we need to talk about this thing, but we also can't talk about this thing, but we really need to, but we can't. So it was a bit awkward. And I think somebody got in touch with me through the podcast and said, I think they actually were wanting me to do an episode on how important it was to avoid reinfection. I think was actually what they were suggesting. And I was just like, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I had people kind of lined up to come on, and, well, not lined up, I'd never approached anybody, but I had a few people in mind. And then I also thought it would be really good to get a balanced view, because I knew that you had talked about this previously, because I think someone else had mentioned that. So I thought, well, could I get the both of you on together? And then I just thought, this is going to be a mess, because it's like I think in the end that was why I approached you, because I realized that this was something that I needed to do something about. And I don't think I want to go to massive gigs like I did before, but I need to be in a position where I can maybe cope with Malky going to the office occasionally, or some of these things. I need to do something, and I think that's been one of my things the whole way through. It's always been, what can I do? I remember Dr. Boone Lim saying to me something that I stuck on a post-it and put on my wall. It was like, don't let what you can't do prevent you from doing what you can. And that really kind of struck me at the time, because what we do is we focus on all the can't, because there's so much can't.
That's right.
And there's so much can't. And then when all you think about is what you can't do, it's exhausting. And then that feeds into the already level of exhausting that we have, which is already more exhausting than we want. So it's so yeah, I think that really struck me. So it's always been, right, what can I do? We don't need to worry about the can't, because we know all that. So yeah, I think that was kind of what I was thinking when I approached you to do that episode, because it was just getting to this point where, you know, Malky and I aren't going to make it if I can't find some way of coping with some of this stuff. And
Yes.
part of me was like, well, maybe we shouldn't if he can't handle me.
Right.
But at the same
Can't
time,
accept me for who I am right now.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe this is not meant to be.
But at the same time, that wasn't what I wanted. So I thought, right, well, we need to find some way of some sort of compromise, and I don't know. I think to some extent I still feel now I'm just like, well, why would anyone want to get sick? I think there are things that we should all be learning from this past 3.5 years, in regards to, people spreading bugs around, like, and again, this is tied into the whole culture thing, isn't it? If you're sick, you should be allowed to be sick, you know,
Right.
even
We
if
should
it's
be encouraging people to stay home until they're better.
exactly,
Don't give it
whereas
to everyone.
this culture we have, it's work, work, work. You have a cold, well, you still need to come in. It's like, no, actually, if you have a cold, you're sick, you should be allowed to take a couple of days off, and then
Yeah.
you'll get better quicker.
Yeah. And then you're
I mean,
not going to lose 50% of the workforce to the same cold.
exactly. So all
Yeah.
of these things we should be learning. People shouldn't be going into public places when they're not well. But the problem is a lot of people go into public places not realizing they're sick. So even with the best of intentions, you still can't
So
avoid everything. And I think that was the thing that was
that's the
scaring me.
yeah. Because you didn't know you had COVID. You didn't know
Exactly.
you didn't have any of those symptoms. You just felt tired. Now we can go to work and feel tired regularly, right? But you don't
Exactly.
know you've got a virus that might be something that, is about to massively disrupt your life. So, I mean, one of the things that we talked about in the podcast was, there are those people that are rewarded by the safety that they set around them and the smallness that their life is kind of made in order to keep themselves safe. And then there are those that are rewarded by the risks that they take and the adventure that they invite in. And it's about making sure you're not too stuck in one of those camps, not putting yourself massively at risk, unless you're really happy with that, but also not closing your life down entirely. That means that you can only operate within the four walls of safety and shut out lots of experiences, because neither of those two extremes are without impact on our mental health. And I could really see, I could see you were hanging on to that kind of rock of safety. But I also felt, when we talked about it in the interview, here is someone that's saying, I want to get brave enough to step away from my rock of safety, but I have no idea, almost literally, how to swim in the sea of risk. I don't know how to take that risk step. And it really struck me, you are one of probably millions of people who have that same thought, and time again, I encounter people who are going, I just can't get it again. It's like, okay, is that because you believe what? Or I believe that if I get it again, it will make me even more sick. And actually, that's when I started to realize we don't have enough reinfection stories going on out there. We don't have enough positive stories around, oh, I've had it 4 times now. And actually, each time got easier and easier and easier. We do need to talk about that and share that piece. And I also have to say here, not everyone is that the case. Every now and again, and I have to say it's a really rare moment, but every now and again I encounter someone who goes, no, it's made me more unwell. But it is important to look at the stats on that. For most people that I encounter now, and as you know, we've got a very big live group that I have with the Rest Repair program. So we often talk about it there. I would say 90% of people, maybe even 95% of people that speak about their reinfection say it helped. It helped move them forwards. It helped shift them. And actually, I know I reached out to you after we'd had that interview and said, I want you to come and do the Fern program because I want you to learn how to get into the sea and swim a little bit, not too far away from your rock, but just a little bit further away, so that, I really felt that, your relationship, the life that you had, you're a young woman, you need to know that you can go out and have a life. And I'm hoping, so one of the things that I've seen now is that you're taking more risk. So talk to me about how that's been, taking more risk consciously and unconsciously. What's that felt like, and what's been the impact on your relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% there yet.
That's okay.
But yeah, I think, I have started, we've been to the pub a few times. Malky goes to the pub sometimes. We sit outside, and actually you want to sit outside because it's the
Right
summer.
now it's great. Yeah.
I think maybe the conversation is going to come more as things start getting a bit cooler and people start going inside. I I don't really care about going to. I've never really been a pub person,
Sure.
but Malky is. So I
Yeah.
think at some point I'm going to need to accept that he's going to need to do that. But I think coming back to the what can we do thing, I think I felt completely helpless in the kind of face of potential reinfection. It was kind of like, well, if I go anywhere, then I'm going to get it because everybody will. And actually, people do come into contact with bugs and they don't get sick. But I wasn't seeing that. I was just thinking, if I went to Tesco's, then I will get COVID. If I go into a pub, I will get COVID. If I,
Yeah,
all of
like
these things.
guaranteed. If I do that, I will get COVID. No.
Exactly. And if Malky does all these things, he will get COVID and he will bring it home and give it to me.
Yeah.
So not only am I going to get much more sick, he might get sick as well. And then, goodness knows what happens if he gets
Right.
ill as well. So it was this kind of like, I don't know, I was terrified for myself. I was terrified for him. And then I suppose, like, in a slightly selfish way, I was slightly terrified that the impact of him getting sick might then have on me when I'm already ill.
Yeah.
So it was this kind of like massive kind of spiral of just terror.
Yeah.
And I felt like a sitting duck because I thought, well, he's going to do these things eventually. Eventually he's going to say, I can't do this anymore, and I'm going to do these things, and he's going to bring it home to me, and boom. And I think what speaking to you made me realize was that I'm not helpless. There are so many things that I can do to help support my immune system. And, partly, getting better will help support my immune system because we know all these things are connected. But, all these other things that I can also do. So, if I do come into contact with something, be it COVID or anything else, because it's not just COVID that's kicking around, there's all sorts of other bugs, then at least my body would have a fighting chance to not get really sick. So I think that really helped because that was something practical that I could do that would then help. And actually, really interestingly, I ended up going on a kind of walking trip. This was quite recently. This was maybe about a month ago, possibly. And I was feeling a lot better. I'd gone off with a friend. She was doing a big long walk. I was joining her for some smaller sections of it because, just because I'm saying I'm better doesn't mean that I actually have any fitness.
Yeah.
So I was joining her for some bits of it. I was being a bit careful to not overdo it, but sort of being able to kind of let myself go and do things. And I joined them in a bothy one night. So I don't know if people know what bothies are, but they're basically little stone huts in the middle of nowhere that we have mainly in Scotland. There are some in England and Wales as well. And they're basically communal huts where anybody can go and sleep. It's very, very rustic.
Yes.
Yeah, it's literally a refuge.
From the storm, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And I used to go to some of these before, and sometimes you'd get it to yourself, sometimes you'd have so many people you were literally sleeping on top of each other. And it was always good fun.
Yeah.
So I'd gone and I took my tent because I thought I will not feel comfortable sleeping in a room with all these other people. And I can run away to it anytime I need to. So I got there and it was absolutely lashing down with rain. So I pitched my tent in the rain and the wind and thought, gosh. So then I sort of
drawn to that idea.
So I went into the bothy, and I was in there for sort of a couple of hours probably. We had the fire on, it was really nice.
Yeah.
And then I went and slept in my tent and woke up in the morning and it was all sunny, and I went for a swim and it was great. But then once I'd had my swim and everything was great, I realized that one of the other guys that had been in the bothy last night, he wasn't just tired, he had some bug. And
Oh,
I was instantly went, well, again, I'm not going to say what I said because
here we go.
yeah, exactly. And I was starting to go into this massive panic of, oh my goodness, not only am I going to pick up this bug, but also I'm a good 10K from the road. It was quite a remote spot that I'd managed to get myself into. And it was just like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, what have I done? The one time I allow myself to go and do something and to go and have some fun, and I kind of let go, and now I encounter this person who's going to make me sick. And oh my goodness, why did I listen to Susie? I'm such an idiot. Um, and um, and then I thought, oh, hang on,
Wait a
maybe I
minute.
should listen to Susie.
This
What
is the
would Susie
moment.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah, what would Susie do? Well, she wouldn't fly into a blind panic, that's for sure.
No.
So I thought, right, well, maybe I have picked up something, but what can I do to try and kind of negate this? So I thought, right, well, I need to believe in my immune system for
There we go.
starters. I'd been out in nature quite a lot. That's quite good for your immune system. I'd been trying not to overdo things, so I hopefully wasn't too stressed, other than the blind panic that I was flying into. So I thought, right, let's believe in this. Because is everybody who was in that bothy last night, is everybody going to come down with this bug? Well, maybe they are, but generally not everybody gets it. So I thought, right, let's do that, and let's just try and be practical. And I walked out from there with my friends and had a relaxed evening the night after. And at one point I started getting what I thought was a slightly scratchy throat, and again, here comes the blind panic. And I
Oh,
thought, well, hang on, I'm probably dehydrated
yeah.
because I've been walking, the sun's out. And so I had a nice big swim in the loch we were camping next to. And I think we went to the beach, and just tried to be relaxed, tried to just be good to myself. And I think I must have driven home the next day thinking, oh gosh. But I was convinced while I was driving that I was going to get home and I was going to be in bed for a week, and I wasn't. Every time I started falling into that, I tried to just go, no, no, come on, this might not happen. It might do, but it might not happen. And I was absolutely fine. I mean, I was tired because I'd been away for a few days, but I was absolutely fine. And at that point, I thought, right, okay, so plenty of people do get sick, but actually you can go places and you can do things, and you're not necessarily going to get sick every time. So I think that gave me a little bit more kind of faith in my body to actually behave itself.
Absolutely.
Because I think over the last few years, I just felt like my body wasn't my own. It was, it wasn't behaving in a way that it should. And when I tried to make it do things, it would go no, it would rebel, and it would never do the right things at the right time. Or if it did, it was like a miracle.
Yeah.
So this was just kind of like, right, okay, well, I asked you to do a thing, and actually you did a thing.
Mm.
So it was kind of, I had a bit more faith in that. And I'm starting to see myself just be more resilient to other things as well. Like I drove my car into a ditch last week, and all I did was laugh. Maybe shouldn't have said that on YouTube, actually. I wasn't going fast and no one was hurt.
No one was harmed in the process. It wasn't deliberate, I'm assuming.
No, it was a parking error.
Oh, okay.
But I sort of got out the car, and after kind of swearing a few times, I sort of went, well, this is actually quite funny. This is actually quite amusing. The front wheel of my car is in the ditch and it's not going anywhere, so I'm going to go for my swim anyway because that was why I was there.
Oh, it's going to steal that car.
Exactly, yeah. It's not going anywhere. And it wasn't blocking a road. There was no harm done.
Yeah.
And it was just quite amusing. And yeah,
what I'm loving about this, Jackie, is I'm hearing that you're now much more conscious of your mindset and the impact that's having on your ability to engage with life again. You know, there was a shift. So in the Fern, the thing that basically that runs through the whole program is we ask ourselves in lots and lots of different ways, don't we? But just, is this the best thing that I could be doing with my brain right now? And essentially, you know, that self-talk that you had there, you go into a catastrophic self-talk cycle. There's nothing that you can do in that moment. We have no control over the outside circumstances. You have no control over whether or not a virus has been breathed in by you or not. You have no control over that. The only thing we have control over is what we think and our response to those thoughts. And so actually, it's not very helpful. You're 10 miles from anywhere, you're in a bothy on the side of a mountain. Is it going to be helpful for me to be in a catastrophic negative downward spiral of, oh no, it's all doomed, I'm going to get sick? Or is it going to be more helpful to go, well, I might get sick or I might not get sick, but hey, I'm somewhere really nice and I need to get my spirits up because I could still enjoy my time here. Viruses tend to take some time to kick in. If it's going to kick in, it'll kick in a few days, unless it's something like the norovirus, which, you know, can speed up a little bit. But essentially, we have to be able to work with our thoughts and our responses. And that's what you've started to really demonstrate that you can do. And it's just given you that window, hasn't it? That little kind of buffer space to be able to go, I enjoyed that. And I might do that again. And even with your relaxed state about getting your car in the ditch, it's actually no big deal. Did anyone die? No. Did I die? No. Okay. So maybe it's a bit funny that I managed to reverse into a ditch. Great. That space, that mental space where we're not beating ourselves up is so important. And I think when we start to understand the importance of what happens, you know, mentally on our physical body, I think we start to see that link there, that autonomic nervous system piece around stress and, you know, symptom exacerbation, to learn to kind of manage ourselves as best we can. So constantly checking in, is this the best thing that I could be doing with my brain right now? No, it's not helping me. It just makes me feel terrible. Is there anything that I can change about it? Well, my circumstances I can't change, but I can change my thoughts. And that's the piece that I really see that you've taken with, because you're kind of blossoming a bit more now as a person. You know, you're having a bit more fun in your life. Would you agree? Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's just, again, it's what can I do, isn't it? You know, there's not a lot of point focusing on what we can't do because we know that.
Yeah.
So, you know, what can I do? I can improve my breathing. I can be generally as healthy as I possibly can. You know, I can try not to get myself into stressful situations. I mean, sometimes they come along and you can't help them, but you know, at
Oh,
least then you're in the best possible place to deal with them. So
exactly.
it's, yeah, what can I do? Right, well, I can make sure that I'm not thinking myself into catastrophic kind of
Yeah.
spiral,
Yeah.
because, you know, it might happen anyway, but it sure as hell isn't going to help.
No, right. And it's also not happening right now.
Yeah.
So why not wait and respond with whatever the response is when it actually starts, rather than going, oh no, now I'm going to spend 4 or 5 days completely convincing myself that I'm unwell before anything's even changed in my body. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, in some of the recent phone groups, we've been calling it the toboggan of doom, where you get on it and you're just off. And it's so slidey and slippy and well trodden, the kind of pathway, that you just can't stop it. You have to ride the run. And actually, you know, kind of being aware of the thoughts means you can put a couple of kind of picks out to the side and slow things down a bit and actually go, I'm just going to stop and get off this and go and think about something else that might be just more beneficial to me. So, you know, I love that you're doing that more. And I know that I reached out and got in touch with you and went, hey, let's do an interview, because I'd been seeing some of your posts were much more, you know, I'm beginning to step back into my life in a way that allows me to enjoy it more fully. And so the impact of that on your relationship must also be great. And obviously it's summer, but the more you do this, the more you'll be prepared for winter and have more evidence in the bank that, oh no, I don't get sick whenever I leave the house and go and interact with people. I've got more evidence to prove that that's not true. That's a worry, and it's a significant worry based on real fact, but it's not the truth. It's not the truth. And I think that's the piece that I want, you know, anyone listening to this to really hold on to. those worries are they're based on genuine trauma and upset and the reality of illness, but they're not the truth. You won't get sick if you go to a supermarket anytime, you might do, but it's not guaranteed. And that's the thing that we have to hold on to. Because it's much softer. There's a softer edge to all of those things. And when we can allow that to happen, we can get to live our life a bit more fully and feel a little bit more connected to society again. And when we feel connected, we're healthier and we're happier.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really interesting. I mean, earlier, in fact, I think it was the week that I started the Fern program, in fact, and I had picked up some what turned out, I think, to be a stomach bug, but I just hit the deck on Monday morning. I got up, and within like half an hour I was like, oh gosh, I feel awful, I'll try to do some yoga. Nope, that was far too active. I was lying on the floor trying to do a yoga nidra, and I just couldn't even do that. And I ended up spending about 36 hours in bed not moving, and it was absolutely horrendous. And I remember, and to start with, obviously I did the whole, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, I've managed to pick up COVID. Where have I picked up COVID? I haven't been anywhere.
All COVID, it's not anything else.
Exactly. And and again, I think partly because that was how my COVID did start. It did start kind of, it was a bit like a stomach bug to start with.
Same for me.
So that was kind of like, so I went straight into that. And then after about half a day, I was like, I'm not sure this is. And I think it was just a stomach bug. And it was once I realized that actually it was just a stomach bug, and healthy people get stomach bugs, I was like, oh, so is my body behaving like a healthy body? Like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Like, normal people do this?
Right.
And like, it was a horrible, horrible experience. But yeah, it was quite interesting just to kind of be like, right, well, I just have to ride this out then. And it knocked me out for, I was in bed for a couple of days. And then after that, I felt pretty kind of weak after that, because I hadn't been able to eat anything. I'd just been feeling really awful. But then, after about a week, it was maybe 10 days before I was back to kind of how I was feeling before. But it was, I was kind of like, okay, this is a bit more normal. Okay. I mean, not nice normal by any means, but it was a thing.
Well, I think the thing that, people sort of lose sight of when they're so focused on everything that's going on with their body being to do with COVID and that recovery from, they lose sight of the fact that actually there is not one sort of permanent state of health that we're working towards in our recovery. We're just working towards a regular homeostasis, where people will get sick, and then, the piece that we want is for people to get sick and then get better, and for it to not take a really long time. But the getting sick bit is about as normal as it gets. And, we have to embrace the idea that we will pick up bugs and viruses, because that's what happens. But just to not be so afraid of them when they happen, and to not catastrophize it and attach it all back to that period. We have to have full stops and draw lines under things, and then say, oh no, now I've got a new stomach bug, but it's nothing to do with this past, this narrative, and allow myself to just do what I need to do and feel rubbish for 10 days, and then, oh, I'm okay again. So yes, I think that's a really interesting comment that you've made, because a lot of people I meet, and talk to on the program go, oh, but surely there's a point where we're just healthy every single day. And I'm like, I wish.
I know,
my days fluctuate, from morning to afternoon, never mind from week to week. So, and that I call myself healthy, so we have to also understand, what is our definition of recovered? What does recovery actually feel like? What am I expecting to recovery feel like? Because I think sometimes it's unrealistic what this version of recovered self is supposed to look and show up like. And I think, we're human beings, and we fluctuate day to day, sometimes hour to hour, and that is pretty normal. So also beginning to change the kind of the bar for which people are headed for, I think is quite an important thing to take into account as well. Most people are changed by this experience, by this, I know that my immune system has changed. Well, actually, not my immune system. I think my immune system works better than it's ever worked before, because I really know how to look after myself. I think my energy levels, also I'm 51, my energy levels, my hormone levels change my experience of things as well. But I definitely am very forgiving of myself now. If I feel terrible, I just go, feel a bit terrible. Go and go and have a rest. Okay, I will. I won't try and achieve anything whilst doing it either. So, that has been a piece, I'm sure, for you as well, that you've taken on board.
Yeah, I mean the definition of recovery thing was quite a big thing for me. I remember um there's been people that I've interviewed where they've said, I had a moment and
Mm,
suddenly I was cured, kind of. It wasn't quite that dramatic, but it was kind of like, I just knew. So I
yeah,
was thinking, right, okay, so I'm
right,
expecting these kind of fireworks to go
yeah,
off.
yeah,
And, things were getting better and better and better. As I said, I thought I was doing really, really well. And then when you suggested the Fern program, that was really helpful. It just really tied together a lot of stuff that I sort of knew quite a lot of it, but it was very kind of jumbled, and you put it into this little box that was very helpful. And it was really, really helpful because, yeah, like it just kind of reinforced all sorts of things, and and put them into a sort of presented them in a way that was useful,
yeah,
rather than the sort of chaos that was going on in my brain, where and I was doing things and then you put a name to them and I was like, oh, that's a thing, oh, okay. So now I can actually, rather than doing it by accident and finding that it works, I can actually do that as a
yeah.
thing when I feel I need it. So I think it might have been the final session where I sort of said I realized that actually I don't think I'm sick anymore. I wouldn't call myself recovered, but I don't see myself as a sick person anymore. And that was quite exciting. And then after that, I was like, I was feeling better and better and better, and I was doing more and more and more. I was starting to do a lot more exercise, and I was feeling okay. And I was just kind of like bumbling along a little bit. And I don't know. I At one point, it wasn't like I was really thinking about recovery. I was just kind of, I knew I wasn't quite there yet, and I knew it wasn't fixed, and I knew there were still things, and there were still, pieces and everything. And then actually I was being interviewed for Laurie Rivers summit. And I said to her beforehand, I said, I would consider myself kind of not really sick, but not 100%, So she was like, oh, that's great. That'll be really interesting to talk about. So we were kind of talking through this thing. And one of the things that was really useful in the Fern was the working out the personality drivers. And when I
Yeah.
realized, I mean, if someone had said, are you a perfectionist? I'd have said, yeah. But it was something about seeing it. I had a really high perfectionist score. And not only that, I think I also had the speed, the
Do
need
it
to be
quickly. Yeah,
perfect, but also the need to do it really fast.
yeah.
And so I was saying to Laurie, I was like, yeah, realizing that I was a perfectionist, that was quite useful, because then I could kind of, you know, try to counter it. So when I felt myself being a bit, perfectionisty, I would sometimes be able to recognize it. I'd be able to step back and say, are you being a bit you? Do you need to maybe just take a step back and maybe ask somebody else if you think it's good enough, kind of thing, rather than me being me? And then I had this moment with Laurie where I was just like, wait a second, I'm being a perfectionist with my recovery, aren't I? I think I'm better, because I was doing this thing where I thought, right, well, I'm still a bit anxious. I'm still, around about people, there's still trauma bubbling around. I'm still hypersensitive of everything that's going on in my body. And then I kind of thought, well, that's the new me. I am going to be more sensitive about what's going on in my body because I'm listening more, and I am going to be more anxious because that's something I'm still working on, and I am going to have trauma because you don't fix trauma doesn't go away. So all of these things, they are part of Jackster 2.0, and that
Yeah,
is exciting.
yeah.
That is the new me. So at that point I was just like,
Oh,
hurrah.
I'm there.
So I have no idea how
This
that
is
interview
it.
is
This is
going to
what it
turn out.
looks like.
That interview is going to be hilarious to watch back.
Nice.
But it was just
You
at
can
that
do
point where I
it.
realized, and I didn't say anything to anyone for a couple of weeks after that. I think, other than Malky, I said to Malky afterwards, I was like, I just realized I'm better, and he was just like, yeah, I know. Um, so he'd realized before I had. It was almost like I think when I was sick, we'd have these better periods and we'd have these worse periods. And when you had a better period, you'd fall into that trap of thinking, well, not even that trap, that kind of thing where you're like, this is it, things are getting better, I'm going to get better, this is great, this is going to be the one. And then you'd hit a dip and it would be awful and it would be traumatic, every time you hit that dip. And then you'd start going up again and you think maybe this is the time. And when that happens over and over and over and over again, you start to lose that belief. And I think one of the things I realized was the belief in recovery was really important, but it's impossible to have that belief sometimes when you're constantly having your hopes dashed. And I think for me, a lot of the time, it wasn't even belief. I mean, it was, but it was almost this kind of like refusal to accept that I wasn't going to get better. It was like me digging in my heels and going, yes, okay, today I'm feeling terrible, and okay, maybe I'll allow myself to wallow a bit because, I think that's okay to do it. But, okay, tomorrow, let's try and see what we can do. I'm not doing good. So what are we going to do? Right. Well, we're going to go back to the yoga. We're going to go back to the yoga nidra. If I can't leave the house, then we'll go for a cold shower rather than a loch. And then when I've got a bit more energy, maybe a couple of days later, then we'll go for a swim. So it was this, just kind of really digging my heels in and just refusing to accepting that this was, I'm not feeling good now, but I refuse to accept that I won't get better.
Yeah. Well done.
So yeah, I don't know if that's healthy, but that's what it was.
Well, it's got you to where you are, Jackie, which is great. So, refusing to believe that you won't get better, I think is super important. Actually, if we resign ourselves, then we stop wanting to do the work. And actually, it does take work to recover. We have to work on the mind and the body, and we need to really treat it with integrity and respect. And we have to respect the journey psychologically, physically. But if you just kind of surrender to it, then progress slows down. And I think we modify our lives entirely. And that, for some people, is what they need to do. And for others, that then keeps them stuck when maybe they don't need to be stuck. But, you never know until you're on the journey. So I think there's one thing that we can kind of share with everyone today. And that is, if possible, don't give up the hope. Don't give up the belief that, you can get to a point where your life is one that you really want to live again, and that it's enjoyable. And, it might be different. There might be changes, but actually there's and we talk in the Fern, so your upgrade to Jackie 2.0, we talk a lot in the Fern about creating a new operating system where you can kind of move out towards, a future you, where you've taken all of the wisdom that you've learned on the way and you take it with you to make sure you don't repeat patterns that may have contributed to you getting as sick or whatever it is, so that, you've just got more respect for your own well-being and respect for, mental and physical health. That's Jackie 2.0.
Yeah, exactly. And I am a very different person to what I was before. And I think I'm a better person. I think that's why it's 2.0, isn't it? It's, Brilliant. Yesterday I went hiking and it was really hot and I was really tired afterwards, but I did it. And it was fantastic. And, this is stuff that I'm still going to do. But today, instead of going out hiking again and doing the same thing all over again, I'm having a slightly more restful day where I talk a lot. And this afternoon I'm going to go for a swim. So, it's kind of, I don't know, I feel like I have a greater respect for my body. I'm not invincible. I don't, I think especially when you're young, you feel invincible. And, this has proved to me that I'm not, but also I'm maybe stronger than I thought I was because I've managed to come out of it. Yeah. So, we've done this. So let's try not to end up back there. Let's, try to be as healthy as we can. Let's, healthy in every way, whether it's, body, mind, I mean, they're same thing really, aren't they? So, I think, a much greater respect for what I'm putting myself through, I think.
Well, the big thing that has served you very well is your absolutely dogged resilience. So, Jackie, I love that. And I love that you've, got all those wonderful interviews now behind you. I can't wait to see what you do next. I did ask you the other day to put together a brilliant book on cold swimming for recovery. So I'm hoping you run with that one.
That could be a thing. That could definitely be a thing.
I think that would be so good. Places where they don't take too much effort to get to, that are, nice and gentle and easy. That, I think that would sell.
I'll do it.
Good. So It's been absolutely gorgeous talking to you today, Jackie. Let's sign off now, and hopefully, hopefully people who are watching this interview, listening to this interview, can really take some of your resilience and kind of rub it on and keep going forwards, because, I think the thing is, just don't give up hope. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Amazing. Have a lovely swim this afternoon in your loch if you get there. And it's been a real pleasure talking to you, my love. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.